I would send this clip to any parent out there who does not see the podcast because this bit is incredibly important. Do not put the money for your kid's future in cash.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I'm Michael Vincent. That's James Blair. And today we're talking to you about how to invest for your kid's future.
We're back in your life. And today we're talking about what every parent wants to do for their children, Mike.
Keeps me up at night.
Give them a head start.
Oh, 100%. But not too much of a head start, but we'll get into that.
Oh, yeah, that is a deep subject. I reckon I need to get a doctorate in psychology and then I can talk about it because it's deep. Really at the end of the day, when we do financial planning, when we're talking about, this whole podcast, the reason you're watching is usually one of four things, right? You want to live in a cool home or renovate it. You want a nice lifestyle now. You want financial freedom in the future. And parents want to give their kids a head start.
It's surprising because they're little terrors and they're annoying as hell.
I tell you what, Coops the other day, we were at a blueberry picking farm. He picked 1.5 kilos and we paid for 1.5 kilos. He consumed at least half a kilo as he went. One for the bucket, one for me.
Yep.
And
how'd that go when he got home?
I don't want to get too graphic,
okay,
but full blueberries out the other end.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, so investing in your child's future. Let's start with how can you invest in your child's future? What are some of the different ways we can do that?
I mean, really at the end of the day, there's two key concepts in terms of financially supporting them. The first thing I'd like to say is just remember, everyone's in a different financial position. I don't feel like, at its core as a parent, you've got the responsibility to, give them an education, to feed them, give them shelter, all those sort of things. But for those that want to go above and beyond, in terms of, the main ones are maybe private schooling, help them get a car, help them maybe with an OE or university costs, or contribute to, like if they're going to do a trade, maybe some of the costs to do that. And the first home is obviously the one that you see a lot. Those can be done in one of two ways. Either as the child is young, you're regularly contributing into a fund, or you focus on getting yourself ahead and then draw down on assets and give them a lump sum later on.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the key thing that people need to decide on. There's no better or worse. It may feel better to be putting money aside into a long-term fund. That's an emotional thing. But actually, mathematically, it might be better for you to just go the other way. Like if you're paying 7% on your mortgage, paying your mortgage off as quick as possible, I would say is likely to get your child into a far better position in the future.
Yeah, question for you, Mike. No, you don't have kids yet, which, probably a good thing at this stage, is we know you're not the best at your budget. And for those that aren't great at their budget, there is an argument that the automatic payment into a fund is potentially going to give a larger lump sum.
Yep.
Would you like to do that strategy, or do you think you'd be fine to just grow the wealth and then draw back down on it later?
I think it would be grow the wealth and draw down on it later for me. Do you mean if I was investing for my theoretical kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be grow the wealth. The reason for that is, yes, I'm not great with my budget. However, I'm not great with my budget from what's left over. You know what I mean? I'm still really good at paying my mortgage down, putting stuff aside for, expenses, the investment stuff we're doing. I've made a recent decision that I'm not going to do up my house at the moment. I'm going to keep onto that cash and use it to buy more multis. So yeah, I think for me, and also I work in the industry. It makes more sense for me. If I had nothing to do with finance, didn't work in the industry, maybe doing drip feeding stuff.
Is it pair of jeans new?
No, these are old. These are from the 90s. These are from the 90s. These are like way old.
Yeah, all right.
That's why they're so baggy.
Good luck sticking to that budget. So when it comes to those two different options,
not that bad.
One is fundamentally
anymore.
One is I still don't believe you. One is fundamentally quite simple. Like we're paying down debt, we're buying investment properties. Once the debt's gone, we're contributing to shares. We've done that whole story 1,000 times. If you are going, I want to set up a automatic payment for a kid's account, the first thing, and I would send this clip to any parent out there who does not see the podcast because this bit is incredibly important. Do not put the money for your kids' future in cash. It is going to have a dramatic difference at the end of the day. And like, I've had this conversation with lots of people where it's actually probably the most common one I have in like a social setting as a financial advisor, when people go, where should I put money for my kids? We know that compounding returns, if you are a baby and you do not need the money until you're 20 years of investing, it's going to make a huge difference in terms of how much money is there at the end of the day. I see so many people putting into savings accounts, term deposits, all those sort of things, 2 or 3% versus 10% on average over the long term is going to end up being a hell of a lot more money.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's kind of, making sound, reasonable financial decisions. Yes, you want to invest in your kids. Yep, putting cash aside or putting money aside is a really good way to do that. Just be a little bit smarter about it. Make sure we're doing it the right way. So James, when should you not invest in your children? Let's go the other way.
If you are not in a great financial position, so if you've got high interest debt, maybe you're not saving at the moment, you're not good with your expenses, not looking at anybody in particular.
I'm not that bad anymore.
Look, I'm not that bad. You cannot, and we've had conversations with clients a lot of times, and this is a one I lose all the time as a financial advisor. I talk to them blue in the face. You cannot sacrifice your own future for your kids' future. It's being a horrible example for your kids, because they'll probably do the same thing for your grandkids, and that's not what you want. So if you have high interest debt, if you're not in a solid financial position, be a good role model and get yourself into a better financial position first, and then once you've got those good foundations, you can go and invest.
Yeah, and I would argue that although you're not directly investing in them, if you play that right, you are investing in your kids' future.
Yeah. The other one is when we try and give them too much money, which I know sounds like a bizarre thing to say, but once again, you live in a bubble a little bit as a financial advisor. I've got clients where maybe they've got a debt-free home, maybe they've got some cash in the bank, and they go, I'm going to give the kids, nice round numbers, $100,000. And I'll do the financial projections and I'll be like, well, you're going to run out of money in retirement if you give your kids that much money. And they'll be like, yeah, but little Jimmy, he's just such a good kid, wants to get on the property ladder. And I'm like, screw little Jimmy, look after yourself first, make sure you're going to be okay. Because on the flip side, what happens if you give away too much money to kids? You end up being a liability for your kids in the future. And no kid wants to see for their parent to be struggling financially. And that's actually the most important thing, is you don't want to be a liability for your child in the future.
Yeah.
Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below.
All right, James. So we've talked about, investing in yourself versus your kids, and sometimes actually getting yourself out of a bad situation, yourself out of that debt is actually investing in your kids over the long term. But I want to talk about this concept of a warm inheritance versus a cold inheritance. Can you explain to the listeners what that is?
Yeah, so a cold inheritance is when you get the money when the body is cold. A warm inheritance is when there's blood still running through the body. So it's the idea that sometimes when we do financial projections, that some people are, will die with quite a lot of money. And if you go, well, they're gonna, by the time you're 90 or whatever, your kids
I'm not hitting 90, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing you're still alive. But once you're 90 and say you die, your kids are probably 60. They've already grinded their whole life to get to the financial position that they're in. But if you can do financial projections, map the whole thing out and go, actually, I know I'm going to have this amount of money left over, rather than giving it to the kids way later in life, I'm going to give it earlier if they're showing the right habits and all that kind of good stuff, then that's going to get them in a better financial position far faster.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, again, it's all going to come down to your situation and what's right for you, because you might hear that concept and go, oh, well, a warm inheritance makes so much more sense. How do I go about that? You've got to have a strong financial base. You've got to make sure you've invested in yourself first, and you can afford to do that. And we get situations where customers will have their parents give them 10,000, 50. We've had a $900,000 gift as a warm inheritance to the kids. And we were like, wow, this is quite a bit. Like, these kids are going to be spoiled and, not that onto it. Total opposite. They were like, knew what they were doing, knew what they were going for, buying the right properties, doing the investments. So just because you're giving them a lot doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, but you've got to make sure you're giving it to them in the right way.
Which does bring me to the next thing I want to talk about, which actually every household in the country can do, rather if you're super rich or super poor, is, and especially for those that aren't in a position where they can give their kids money, is what you can do is you can be a role model. And whether you do have a lot of money or a little money, you can show that your kids that you stick to a budget. You can talk to them about, your decisions around whether you buy something or haven't bought something or we're saving towards something. You can demonstrate to your kids that you've made, talking about KiwiSaver, when you give them pocket money, what percentage goes towards saving versus spending now, staying away from bad debt. Shares is a really good tool to go and educate themselves on shares, and when they're little, making horrible decisions with investments, because when they're much older, they will have learnt those lessons. I've got heaps of people talk to me about the lessons their parents taught them about, like investing.
Let's say I'm in a position where I actually can start investing for my kids. What are some of the things I should actually invest in? Because we've talked about not keeping it in savings because we know it's just going to go backwards. What should I do? What's the correct way to do it if I want to build up a fund?
So one I see quite a lot is using KiwiSaver for kids. My suggestion is to not do that, which might surprise a lot of people. And the reason for that is, hey, much better than investing into a savings account in terms of returns, but it's getting access to the money that is really hard. Housing is going to become more and more unaffordable in the future, which means that there'll be lots of people who never own a home. And if you've contributed all of this money and they don't buy a house, it's for retirement. But they could use that to, buy their tools to start their trade, or buy
university.
University, OE, whatever it might be. Maybe buy like an investment property or invest into shares, whatever it might be. So I would not go down the KiwiSaver route. I would invest into an unlocked version of KiwiSaver.
Yeah.
So we're still investing into shares. We're still not picking our own stocks. It's in a diversified, high growth strategy, assuming your kids are, 10 years plus away from accessing it. Some providers that are really good, I would say like pretty low cost in most situations there. Kernel's high growth fund, Simplicity's high growth fund, a Milford, which is an active fund manager, that's perfectly fine as well. But just make sure you're regularly. So the first thing is a automatic payment consistently into that account, a high growth strategy if they're young, and just regularly drip feeding over time, and just more or less lose the password. Just set up the AP and then look at it every once in a while, because it's a very long-term investment.
Yeah, and you just want to make sure you're paying attention to all the right things at the start. So what is the risk? What is the timeline? What are the fees on this? What are they actually going to charge you? James talked about, an active kind of versus passive strategy there. Your passive is going to have a lower fee on it than your active usually. But it's really important that you make sure you choose the right provider and fund for what you're trying to do.
So that is all to do with investing for your kids' future. Very keen to hear in the comments, what strategies do you have set up for your kids to help them get ahead? If you are helping them, how are you going to help them? If you don't want to, why not? Let us know in the comments. Much love to Partners Life for sponsoring this episode. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel, give us a review, give us a like, and we'll catch you next time.
Cheers.